Hey y'all, Tricky Nicky here. Sorry about the break from uploads. I thought it was just burnout and lack of motivation, as I've discussed previously. Turns out, new disability just dropped. On top of like the 5 I already had. I'm not mad. I'm not mad at all. Luckily, now we're gonna get this figured out soon enough. This weird sack of fluid in my head, its days are numbered. In the meantime, though, here's a bunch of games I've played in that big span of time, basically since the beginning of this year. I'll just ramble off like a paragraph or so about each one and then give them a score out of 10, going through them in roughly the order I've played them. You're gonna notice a lot of high scores throughout, especially at the start, and that's just because I've become pretty good at finding games that I'll enjoy. But if you're looking for bombs, oh, don't worry, there's a few bombs in here. This will be a pretty low-effort video on my part, so sorry there aren't more of the funny edits and precise things I normally do, but the types of videos I've wanted to make in this span of time just haven't worked out because of the aforementioned Fluid Sac. So I just want to get something out there at all. And not all of these are games I was playing for like the first time ever. I'll clarify with each one if it's a case where I've played it before. We're just gonna go through my Steam library and go from beginning of the year till today. So without further ado, let's go. First up is Spiritfarer, which is a beautiful game. It's in like my top 20 of all time now. It's overall a very relaxed management game where you help spirits get ready to go to their final resting place. There's no game over, there's no bad endings. You have a bunch of quests and storylines to do at your own pace. They're all beautifully written, cover admittedly heavy topics about grief and death, but the music and animation is really upbeat and helps to make the mood pretty positive overall. It has a lot of fun mini-games and a huge variety of characters. It's really fun. I'd especially recommend it if you enjoy games like Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon. It comforted me a lot through a time where my intrusive negative thoughts were coming in a little bit again, and I was receiving, this was the onset of the wretched Fluid Sac. And I have just not been able to stop thinking about this game since I've played it. It's really incredible. This is a 10 out of 10 game for me. Next, Those Who Rule. There were like 3 big indie strategy games that came out at the beginning of the year, and this was one of them, and I liked it. There's a lot of cool stuff that makes it different from most strategy games I play. The hex grid system, the high lethality of the combat, and how you can either protect yourself with a one-handed weapon and shield, or lean into the lethality with two-handed weapons. I like the writing quite a bit, especially around chapter 16 when they introduced just one of the most interesting characters ever, and honestly I wish they would have introduced him earlier. The art is nice, but it's a little comical the degree of which the men are just like ripped bodybuilders. Like we're talking like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like part 3 and earlier level. The late game does get pretty repetitive gameplay-wise, but I still had a lot of fun during that time, so it didn't bother me that much. I just, noticed it. Overall, liked it a lot. It's a solid, 8 out of 10. Maybe on a really good day, a 9 out of 10, but I think I'm gonna stick with maybe 8.5. Severed Steel is a cool little indie action game where you can slow down time, jump through the air, do crazy wall jumps and slides to dodge bullets. You also get an arm cannon that can blast through terrain, and that's pretty awesome. It made me think this is a cooler version of Mirror's Edge, to be honest. That said, I only played the game for 3.5 hours before completing the campaign mode, and I didn't really feel compelled to try any of the optional modes. I don't know, it just didn't strike me as something I wanted to play over and over and over again. I just had my time with it, and it was done, and that's okay. But I'm also just not much of a speedrunner or crazy action game person. And it's not terribly expensive either. I think it's $25. It's a fun game. I'd give it a 7, maybe 8 out of 10, with the understanding that it's not necessarily the type of game I enjoy the most. If this is your jam, it's probably a 9. By the way, keep in mind, throughout all these months, from last year's December to still now, I am still playing Marvel Rivals on the side. I think design-wise, this game is absolutely brilliant. There's huge variety in the roster. They're generally smart about balance changes, all the fun skins and emotes and cool maps they keep adding. It has become my most played Steam game other than an idle game, and I still have fun with it after hundreds of hours and like over a couple thousand matches. The worst part about it is the fact that it's online and you have to deal with some really toxic people sometimes. But if this game had like a really, really solid single player mode with like really good AI and maybe some like team building elements, or like some kind of campaign where you can like equip items and stuff, oh my god, this would be the greatest thing ever for me. I would dump so much more time into that than I already have into the multiplayer game. Despite all of its flaws and all of its worst moments and all of the problems the community faces, this is still a 10 out of 10 game for me. I still have so much fun with it, and it's kind of become my hyperfixation game, to be honest. Like this pleases the Fluid Sac, you know? A different game I come back to occasionally, and I went back to, I think, February or so of this year, is Balatro. It has a few light strategy elements to it, but I think treating it like a strategy game is the wrong approach. I treat it as a game I can come to with relatively low brain power. I play it on low difficulties, and I see if I can stumble into any funny builds that can make me get huge numbers. As I'll discuss a bit later, I've been kind of drained on roguelikes. There's a lot of them that I do like. There's also a lot of them I think are kind of bad and overrated, but I've always had fun with Balatro. This is like a 9 for me, maybe 9.5 on a good day. Call of Juarez Gunslinger is an all-time favorite of mine. I went back for another playthrough and I still love it. I think I've beaten this game all the way through probably almost 10 times. The combat feels amazing. All of the guns feel awesome to use, in no small part because of the incredible sound design, the way you hear like the clinking of metal as like you fire the revolver and you can hear it turn to the next cylinder, and it's like, ugh. The point and combo system is really engaging. It encourages you to play as fast as you can and keep racking up kills. The story is also pretty engaging overall, but I think it's better the second time through when you can appreciate all of the bits of foreshadowing and the role each character plays as a sort of narrative device. I mostly love the framing of him telling stories in a bar and the way they utilize that. So as details get misinterpreted or misspoken, that will change the scenario you are playing through. Great game. If you're a fan of first-person shooters with really cool campaigns, you should try it. Absolute 10 out of 10 for me. Next, we're going to talk about Risk of Rain. Not the remake, not the sequel. The first Risk of Rain, released in 2013. I used to really love this game when I was younger, but when I came back to it, I was surprised by how kind of bad it is. You have 4 moves on each character, but for the most part you just kind of spam them as much as you can, like right when they get off cooldown. You use them to slowly break apart super spongy enemies with your pitifully rigid movement, making your way across confusing level designs that aren't fun to traverse. I guess when I was younger, I was more willing to put up with stupid shit than I am now, frankly. Also, when I tried it now, I didn't have all the unlocks I had gotten years ago. I guess because I was on a different computer, or maybe it just didn't cloud save correctly. But basically, I lost all my progress and all the characters I had unlocked. And that kind of left a sour taste on my mouth, because I had a few I wanted to try again. I wanted to try the weird monster guy again, but yeah, it's a shame. Maybe I'll get the sequel someday. Maybe I'll get the remake someday. I'm not super interested in either at the moment, to be honest. Back in the day, I would have called this like an 8. Now I'm thinking like a 3 or 4. Which is really a shame. It really sucks when you go back to a game and you realize you don't like it anymore. Very quick, let's talk about a game called Due Process. This is like an indie version of Rainbow Six Siege, which sounded really cool, and I was like, I'll check it out. And when I tried it, the servers weren't working, and I never got back to it. And I'm not certain I ever will, because the Fluid Sac has arbitrarily deemed it unworthy. Sorry, don't blame me. Blame Fluid Sac. Astral Throne is the second of big 3 indie SRPG releases at the beginning of the year, and I didn't like this one very much, if I'm going to be honest. It's a very slow-paced roguelike where the maps are all basically the length of full Fire Emblem chapters, but there's so little map variety. In fact, I'm pretty sure there is no map variety. So you'll end up replaying basically those exact same chapters, so to speak, on run 2, and then run 3, and then run 4, and so on. And it takes a while. Like, my first failed run made it to the end of Act 2, and that took like 5 hours of gameplay. It is too slow-paced and too repetitive to be an interesting roguelike. And it's a shame because there's a lot of fun character build variety and interesting characters of like the heroes and not the generic like loser guys you recruit. The heroes have really cool kits and are really interesting, but that doesn't change the core gameplay loop enough when you select 2 different heroes to start with. Plus the fact that the doctor is just like, why would you not select the doctor? Because like without him, you don't have a stable and consistent source of healing, and he can just heal you every turn, and that's just a thing he can do. And these are well-designed maps, by the way. I just don't want to play these same ones over and over again. This honestly would have been better as just a linear game, where the heroes you unlock are the main units instead of it being a roguelike. Apparently there have been updates over the months to improve the game. I haven't gone back to it in that time. It's like a 4 out of 10 for me at best. If devs, if you're watching this, if you make an Astral Throne spin-off where you just turn this into a linear game and just have the heroes be the main characters, I'd buy that. I'd buy that despite how I didn't like this first game, because that sounds cool, and I want to see you do that. But I don't know why you decided to make this a roguelike, I'm gonna be honest. Dark Deity 2 is the third of the big indie SRPG releases. This is now one of my favorite games ever. I organize my top 100. I like to have it all nice and cozy, and I think this is around 30, pretty much tied with Sacred Stones, but I have them in my heart basically the same place. With this one, there's a lot of focus on activated abilities that cost mana. Each character has their own mana pool that they can spend on a variety of different things. And it's the classic, you know, there are some really strong abilities that cost a crap load of mana, and you have to decide each turn, is using this ability this turn worth the cost of potentially not being able to use something else the next turn. And each character has their own personal, active, and passive ability, and then each class has 2 active abilities. So it makes each class really unique, and each path you can take the characters down, each of the 4 classes you can choose for them have different tools or different character builds. You can customize what kind of stats you want to focus on the most. This is a really cool system, and it sets it apart from other Fire Emblem-like, so to speak, really, really well. The story and character writing are great, the animations are beautiful, the maps are generally solid, the voice acting is fucking on point. Some of the big names they got for this are kind of surprising. Like, they got Elizabeth Maxwell, aka Urbosa, they got Joshua Waters, they got Allegra Clark for a character who appears in like 2 scenes, which is like, it's just the biggest flex. I love that so much. And I could just sit here and list off, you know, actor names off of IMDb of people you may or may not recognize, but you should play the game and hear the performances, because they're really impressive. There's some sloppiness with the presentation on certain cutscenes. That didn't bother me too terribly much. I'm not that big of a stickler for those things. It's something I notice and then I'm like, whatever. And occasionally there are cases where one weapon or class choice is obviously like kind of terrible, and then the other is like kind of superior blatantly, but it's not to a degree that I would say ruins the game. There are just some oddities here and there, and I wasn't stressing about it that much anyways. I wasn't playing on like a super high difficulty, so I just did whatever seemed fun. Like, I put my boy Benji in like the most high defense class, and then I would feed him every single defense elixir, and then I gave him a weapon where its attack scaled off of defense. I think I swapped to like the hard difficulty to see how much the final boss would do to Benji in that difficulty, and it was like 2 damage. So I just had him stand there, just standing toe to toe with the final boss, just barely taking damage. It was the greatest. Anyways, it was really fun. I'd highly recommend for strategy game fans, especially Fire Emblem fans. I'd give this like a 9.5 out of 10. Is it a 10 out of 10 for me? Honestly, I'm not even sure. I'll stick with 9.5 for now, but know that in my heart it might be a 10. Luftrausers. This is an arcade-style game where you fly around on a plane and shoot hordes of enemy planes and boats, and you can switch up your plane's body, engine, and weapon to a pretty big variety of combinations, and what combination you have even changes the music, which is an awesome touch. It definitely controls weird, but in a way where it feels like you can master it, at least in my opinion. I have some nitpicks after playing it for hours on end, but the fact that I did play it for long enough to notice some of these things that bother me, that's a pretty good sign, I think. This is like an 8.5 out of 10 for me, maybe 9 on a good day. Immortals of Aveum. Oh boy. Oh boy. I'm conflicted on this one. I saw the trailer and it looked really, really cool to me. It looked very sort of like Doctor Strange spellcasty to me when I looked at the gameplay, and I was like, that's really awesome. And Doctor Strange is, I just love the aesthetic of that character. So the fact that it reminded me of him was like, this is an instant sell for me. I'm conflicted on this because it feels like every department had one very passionate person with really cool, really interesting ideas, and then one super pushy person with like the worst ideas ever. And then the rest of the dev team kept getting pulled back and forth between them. The character building options are pretty interesting. There are some fun tools to play with, but the core mechanics don't deviate quite enough just from basic shooter for me. Again, I was hoping for something a little more Doctor Strangey, a little more like I'm a wizard and I have a slew of spells to work with. The story has some really interesting beats and a few good characters and occasionally a really good scene, but it's overall plagued by dialogue that ranges from underwhelming to downright awful sometimes. It actually has the "he's right behind me" joke in there, like unironically, and there's with some characters and lore that don't make any sense to me at all, that I've still been like trying to wrap my head around, and I still don't understand what certain parts of the story we're trying to do. There's some really cool set pieces that do a lot of the heavy lifting that kept me from dropping it, but overall, when I did get to the end, I was just like, man, this could have been really something special, and as it is, it just isn't. It's like a 5 out of 10 game. I really want to like it. The Fluid Sac wants to accept the tribute, but it just isn't happening. The Fluid Sac has denied your tribute. Sorry, Immortals of Aveum. What studio made this game? Well, okay, I looked it up just now, and first of all, the game is published by EA, which maybe explains some things. And second, it was made by Ascendant Studios, formed in 2018 by a group of veteran Dead Space and Call of Duty game devs. This was the studio's first major game release, and already 20 developers have left Ascendant Studios and formed a new one called Absurd Marin. Well, hey, listen, no matter where all these devs go, I wish them the best, and I hope the next thing they make is fucking awesome. Wanderstop came out about March of this year. I got it immediately. I played it for a few hours and I need to get back to it. This is a really profound story written by the creator of the Stanley Parable with music from C418, who is the original composer of the Minecraft soundtrack. It talks about burnout and self-worth and dealing with failure and a slew of other things. And I played it for only a few hours, not because I didn't like it. In fact, I think it's incredible. I just haven't gotten back to it yet. I've been mixed up between trying other things and working on other projects, and you know, the Fluid Sac. I already relate to the main character so much that I put her as one of the biggest focal points on my new mouse pad. I made a custom design. I went to a company that makes custom mouse pad that like prints them out and everything and sends them to you, and I put her on it because I just feel that passionately about this story that I've only experienced a few hours of. So I 100% absolutely want to get back to it. I just need to do it on my own time. You know, I don't know why, but I can't rush it. I don't think I can score it in good faith right now because I haven't experienced all it has to give me. But it has the workings of a 10 out of 10 game for me. Game Dev Tycoon. This is an old indie classic I've been a fan of for years, and I went to revisit this year. In it, you manage a game dev company. Obviously, the actual games you make are a bit abstracted, but there's still a lot of interesting choices to make. You have to choose a good topic genre combination, then decide the console you're going to release it on, then be smart about what parts of the game you prioritize over others and how much resources you put in, then having your game history available over the years and the ability to make sequels lets you have this sort of history for yourself and your company, where you can have these historical flops, but you can also have these really big successes that set you up to access bigger things. Then you can spend time and money training staff or doing research, and you always have to choose when it's worth it to research something and when it isn't. It's not a difficult game, but it's very engaging. The process of finishing one game and getting ready to move on to another forms a sort of natural gameplay loop that gets really addictive. I think I actually uninstalled it eventually because it was distracting me too much from things I actually needed to work on. It was pleasing the Fluid Sac a little too much. It's a solid 9, maybe 9.5. I could see the argument for 10, but I don't think it quite hits that for me. Number 15, Burger King foot lettuce. Number 15 is Mount and Blade Bannerlord. This is another addictive one. I've been a Mount and Blade fan for quite a long time now, and when Bannerlord launched in early access in March 2020, I was there on the ground floor. I got it immediately, I downloaded it immediately, I was playing the game immediately. And this year, after not playing for like 4.5 years, I came back to the game to see the new stuff and the new mods, and I'm proud to say it's still extremely fun. This isn't a linear story or a set-piece game. This is a sandbox where nations are at war, and the game simulates all these different nobles and nations and castles, the relationships you build with them, the cities and fortresses that they siege, and if you build up your army and your skills and your riches, then you can partake in those wars and those sieges and make your name across the land. It's engaging. It's such a dynamic, ever-changing sandbox that can just do interesting things all on its own, and then you get to partake in it. And the way you can still be getting character progression, even if you aren't winning sieges and taking territory, still makes the experience of losing an engaging experience too. This is probably another 10 out of 10 game for me. Very brief segment here. I tried Marvel's Midnight Suns in no small part because of my Rivals hyperfixation, to be honest. I didn't really get gripped. The strategy gameplay is kind of meh. It's fine, but it strikes me as much more of a game you play if you want to be able to talk to the Marvel cast with your sort of pseudo self-insert character and have your, Persona social link or Fire Emblem support conversation with them or whatever with your avatar. There's some characters I've never heard of before in this, like Nico Minoru, and that's cool, but I find it odd you have like relationship levels with the Marvel characters. I'm not here to play a dating sim with Tony Stark, That's for some people, and you know what? Good for them. If you want that, you should get Marvel's Midnight Suns, but I'm not sure it's for me. I do think I want to go back to it eventually, just to give it more of a fair shot, but it didn't leave that much of an impression on me, and if I had to score it, maybe like a 5 out of 10, maybe 6. I wasn't huge on it. Also around that time was the big update for Another Crab's Treasure that adds New Game Plus, a boss replay mode, a boss rush as well. Lots of cool stuff that a lot of people were asking about, which is super awesome. And I still think Another Crab's Treasure is like a 10 out of 10 game for me. I made another video on the game, I have it on my channel talking about it. Go watch it. But I didn't really feel compelled to play through the game again. It hasn't been that long since I've already played it through twice, and I just have so many other games to play, but it's still very good. You should try it. Arkham Asylum is up next, and this was actually my first time playing the game. I got to it because one of my friends, shout out to Seth, who's showed up on I think a couple videos now, is a huge fan of the Arkham games, and Arkham City is actually his favorite game ever. And I'm really glad that I tried Arkham Asylum. It's pretty short, it's a tad dated, but I also totally see how back in 2009, this was the coolest thing that ever happened. The combat still holds up, the exploration and movement is fun, the story feels very classic Batman, the voice cast is still amazing. You've got Mark Hamill's Joker in there. The combat system was later used in Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor and then the sequel Shadow of War, and again, 2 amazing, fantastic games that I love so much. Back in the day, this was definitely a 10 out out of 10. Nowadays, it's probably more of a 7 or an 8, but it's still good stuff. Up next is Slay the Spire. I'm gonna have to paint a really vivid picture with this one. I first tried it in like winter of 2022. And in 20 hours of playtime, I managed to beat Act 3 with one character, the Ironclad. I didn't really feel like I understood the game that well, or even what I had done differently in that successful run. And at that time, I felt like that one successful run was like, that was enough. I've had my experience with the game, and I feel satisfied with it. If I had stopped there, I would have said it's fine, but a little frustrating, like a 6 out of 10 game. Maybe 7 on a good day. But over the years, I only heard more and more and more about how it's one of the greatest roguelikes ever, one of the greatest games ever. Anyone who likes strategy games should try it and they'll get addicted. They'll spend hundreds of hours on it, which is just not the experience I had. And I just kept getting more and more curious about what I missed. So eventually, in like March of this year, I decided to try it again to see if I can find the appeal of it this time. I should have known this was a mistake, to be honest, because every single time I do this, I get a lower opinion of the game that I'm trying again. And it has happened again. My opinion of Slay the Spire has dropped significantly. I think my big critique is the barrier of reasonable entry for me to start having fun, to be honest. After 45 hours of gameplay on Steam, including the 20 hours that I had before, I'm at the point where I know what a lot of things do, but I still don't understand why I'll have a deck built up that's doing great in Act 2, and then in Act 3 I'll die in like 3 encounters. It's a strategy game where I don't know why I win or lose an encounter, and I'm told repeatedly that I'll get better as I start to memorize what the enemies do, learn all the cards, get better at picking cards. But whenever I lose, it's like it becomes a situation where I'm sure I could have done something differently. Maybe should I have taken less block cards and more damage, or the other way around, or should I have taken that one specific power card I passed by? But whenever I look at the run history, I look at all the card picks and all the encounters, I don't know what I'm looking for that I could have done differently. And it's really frustrating when I'm having a good time and then my run falls apart so suddenly, and I don't know why. Is it because I don't memorize the attack patterns of all the enemies I barely see? Is it because I don't track every relic I have, or I don't know what cards are good at what points in the run? And this was still happening to me pretty much every run after 40 plus hours of gameplay. It's also the fact that it's a strategy game where you have to draw your abilities as cards from a deck, which is so stupid. You take a card for a specific kind of situation, but you can't guarantee you'll even have it for those situations where you need it. And yes, you can get cards that let you draw more cards, but it's just lowering the risk. You're still dependent on that element of chance. There is still the chance that your deck just bricks on you. I have had turns where I draw only block cards and draw cards, and then I play my draw cards and I get more block cards, but the enemy is buffing, they're not attacking, so those block cards are doing nothing, and then I don't have those block cards for when the enemy's actually attacking me, which is when I need them. And because every single fight is dependent on this, every encounter, this will happen to you. And that's not really the type of experience I'm looking for in a strategy game. All that being said, it was still kind of addicting in a weird way. Like, I wasn't having fun, but I kept wanting to play it. And then whenever I would play it, I would not have fun and I'd get really angry. And then that would affect the rest of my day and how I experience things and how I talk to people, because I'd be in a bad mood because I was playing Slay the Spire. But then I was like, oh man, I gotta go play Slay the Spire. Do you know what I mean? It was weirdly addicting, even though I didn't have fun. So eventually I hid it in my Steam library, so then I'd keep myself from reinstalling it. Something about it just like infected the Fluid Sac in the worst way possible, and I don't even know what happened. On a really good day, I could give it a 5. On a bad day, I'd give it as low as a 2. Because there's also the factor that, like, there's not really much in terms of story or character or lore to work off of. The music is kind of underwhelming. The game itself is kind of ugly, if I'm going to be honest. Let's average that to 3.5 out of 10. Brief intermission time for 3 little things I want to cover quick. First of all, as of recording this intermission, I'm 95% done with making the video, and I have only just now realized I forgot that I played Overwatch again. during this time. I just completely forgot that I did that. Very quick overview. The individual character kits are cool, but I feel like Blizzard just didn't know how to form those separate kits into a cohesive game that's fun. And part of the proof of this is like they couldn't figure out how to keep the 3 tank, 3 support team comp from being meta, and so they brought in role queue. But then there aren't enough tank players, so they make it 5v5 with 1 tank. But now tank gameplay is super strongly based on counterpicking the other tank, since there's only one of each now, and the game wasn't originally designed for 1 tank. And every single time they encounter a problem, their fix appears to be bring in something that just makes a new, more significant problem. That's just based on my observations. I haven't kept up with Overwatch over the long years of the live service action, so maybe my assessment of that is completely wrong, but that's my impression. I don't even know what I'd rank it. The best of times it's a 10, the worst of times it's a 1. Take that how you will. Second, because I know a lot of my fan base is subscribed to me for my Fire Emblem content, yes, I have seen the trailer for the new Fire Emblem game. I didn't record my reaction, but I absolutely popped the fuck off. I was screaming my head off. I'm glad I was the only one in the house, because people probably would have come in and to see if I was dying. Let it also be known, by the way, that like 10 minutes after it first aired, I told my friends I suspect they're doing a Radiant Dawn style army separation where you swap back and forth between multiple groups, and this was purely based on vibes and the fact that each of the 4 main characters are getting roughly about the same amount of screen time. There's no one of them who really dominates, and they got equal space on the thumbnail, and I was like, this is the vibe I'm getting. And now a bunch of people that I'm seeing who are doing frame-by-frame analysis are saying the exact same thing, and I feel so vindicated. But yeah, it looks pretty cool. I wasn't a huge fan of 3 Houses personally, so I'm like slightly disappointed it's set in Fodlan again, but like I'll get over it. This has the potential to be really cool still, and I am cautiously optimistic. Lastly, I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Dylan, who made these couple art pieces for my thumbnails, including the one I used in this video. This particular one I originally requested for a completely different video idea that I had like about the beginning of this year, and then I never got around to it for Fluid Sac related reasons. So here we are. I'll put his blue sky in the description. He makes really wonderful art, and you know, I realized I can use my platform to just shill for my friends. Like, my friend Seth has a channel where he uploads stupid memes to sometimes. My friend Michael is writing a novel. Is there other stuff I can shill? I can't think of anything else right now. But like, I should just shill my friends' stuff more often. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say for this intermission. Let's get back to the games. Anomaly Collapse. This is another roguelike, but this is a roguelike I really vibe with. First of all, yes, it's a furry game, but don't knock it for that. It's a lot more visually and musically appealing than the vast majority of roguelikes that I've tried. Especially musically. I still find myself like sometimes with some of the songs in my mind, the bum 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 from the first zone, bum 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 dun 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 dun. But to compare it to Slay the Spire, the items you get on different runs will sometimes give you stat boosts, but sometimes they'll give you different moves, like different types of attacks or support abilities to use in a battle. And then they go on a cooldown after using them, but you don't have to randomly draw them from a deck. When the battle starts, you know you'll be able to use them, and then using them will have that cost of not being able to use it for the next couple turns. Other than that, a single run is pretty long, but each individual encounter is pretty snappy. It's on a one-dimensional grid, which has a surprising amount of depth, with wanting to be near your allies, pushing enemies into different squares, sometimes into obstacles or into the edge of the board. The action points are actually shared among your party members, so it can be worth it to have one person on your team do absolutely nothing, which will generate more action points for the other 2 people to use. That is 100% a valid strategy if you want to do it. It's a really fun time for me. I've played this game over and over again a lot, to the point where one successful run actually was not enough for me. I wanted to just keep on playing it and keep playing with all the different characters. I've mentioned my top 100 games by now. It's in there, make no mistake, I like it a lot. It's like a 9.5. Chroma Squad. This is a game I've played through like 4 or 5 times already over the years, and I decided to do it again. Basically, the premise is that you have your own Power Rangers show, and each episode of the show is like a strategy game map. It's not a particularly difficult or tactical strategy game. I do wish there was more intricate map design, but I still find it fun to use all of your abilities to the fullest, utilize the teamwork powers, and go through the sort of soft management simulator stuff between episodes along the way. The story is also like kind of bad, but it's bad in the way I would expect from a Power Rangers episode, so I think it kind of works perfectly, actually. This is an old favorite of mine. If you don't mind it being pretty light on the strategy elements and just want to have a good time with a relatively easy game, I'd recommend it. It's still like a solid 8.5 or 9 to me. Jacksmith. So this is a game from Flipline Studios, known almost entirely for the Papa's line of Flash games, like Papa's Pizzeria, Papa's Freezeria, Papa's Taco Mia, you know, that whole series of games. And it's in the same vein of taking and fulfilling orders, but instead you're a blacksmith making weapons for warriors to fight monsters with, using different techniques and weapon parts to suit the monsters ahead, and then you get to see how the warriors fare against those monsters with your weapons. It's pretty short, it's kind of repetitive, but it's fun and engaging to try to get every single step of the weapon making process just right, but still as fast as possible for that extra gem bonus. I paid like $6 for the Steam version. It has a really nice, good looking full screen mode, and it was 100% worth it. I'd recommend it if you're into the other games by this studio. It's like a solid 8. Star Renegades. This is another roguelike I really like. Turns out it's not that I don't like roguelikes, it's that I don't like bad roguelikes. The main mechanic is that all actions happen on a timeline, and if you act before an enemy on the timeline, that's how you get critical hits. It's not a random chance. You do it by acting before them on the timeline. And different moves are faster or slower, so using slower moves is less likely to be able to get a crit on someone. Different moves give you specific effects on getting a crit, like pushing them further back on the timeline, or doing more damage, or breaking their armor. Basically, every single action revolves around this mechanic, and it's fun to have this thing to be always playing around and always relatively consistent. You see the enemy's actions before you decide to do anything, and based on that you can decide maybe it's better to defend that turn, or maybe you can push them far enough back that they don't even get a turn. Or maybe you should prioritize a specific enemy. And then of course each character you can choose has different moves, different roles, and the items you can get specialized with each character differently. I could go on, I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's a very good, like 9 out of 10 roguelike. Next one is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This is now one of my favorite games of all time. So I had not really heard of this game at all before it came out, and then suddenly there was tons of buzz. I saw one of my favorite YouTubers play through the intro. Shout out to Wellens, who is someone I really like to watch every now and then, just because she really engages with the themes of a story and really thinks about the characters and the message that it's trying to send. But I watched her play through the intro and I was like, holy crap, this is maybe the best introduction to a game I've ever seen. I am hooked. And it's a turn-based RPG, and I love turn-based RPGs, so I gotta play this game. And it's now one of my favorite games of all time. It's a turn-based battle system that lets you dodge and block enemy attacks so you can still respond to them in real time. It keeps the battle super engaging, especially when enemy combos get really absurd later into the game. Every party member also has a unique mechanic to plan around, different skills and moves and weapons to equip. And then there's the in-depth Pictos and Lumina system that adds so much potential planning and build crafting to the game. Oh, I love how the game plays. And then you add the beautiful music by some guy they found on an obscure music forum. Graphical fidelity and especially art direction that blows me away. A voice cast performance that still makes me tear up. Dear God, it's so insane. This is from an indie studio. This is their first game. This is their debut into the industry. I mean, obviously it's a 10 out of 10 game for me. And no joke, this is fighting with Baldur's Gate 3 as my favorite game ever. That, like, these two are like first and second place. That is just how much I fell in love with this game. Clearly they know how to appeal to people with with fluid sacs in their head. Sorry, I keep joking about the fluid sac. It's so funny to me every time for some reason. This is my new favorite bit. Batman Arkham City. Clearly a huge advancement on the already impressive Arkham Asylum. You get more tools, a bigger world to explore with more to do, a bigger cast of characters showing up, and a story that, while it doesn't explore all the character beats I wanted it to, it's still pretty striking, with an ending that still famously blows people away. And like, even though I knew what the ending was before I got into it, the execution of it still left me in awe. My only wish is that there was a full video game where you got to play as Catwoman, because the little bits where you play as her in this game, I unironically enjoyed her movement and her tricks more than I did for Batman. It's like a 9 out of 10 for me. If someone else called it a 10 out of 10 game, I would not argue with them. Then around this time was when Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 came out. I replayed Chapters 1 and 2 in preparation for the release of 3 and 4, and let me tell you, I still wasn't ready for them. I'm sure anybody actually interested in Deltarune has probably seen plenty about it already, so I'm not to spend too terribly long on it like I would like to, but like, this is probably not a game you play primarily for the bullet hell mechanics. I saw someone in one of my friend groups be like, this game is mind-numbingly easy, I don't see the appeal, but then they also played like all the Toho games, and I'm like, bro, this isn't Toho. This is a game you play for the artistry of it. The story, the characters, the jokes, the themes, the art design and sprite work, the incredible music that Toby Fox cooks up. I also adore thematically this exploration of the separation between player and the character they inhabit, and the narrative that all of these characters are built around, and the existence of the weird route, this desperation to escape the narrative that has been built before you. The character of Susie is one of the greatest I've ever seen from anything, and just set piece after set piece jumping between interesting character moments and absolute hilarity, the sense of humor that absolutely never fails to get me. For me, this is like a 10 out of 10 game that is not quite in my top 10 favorites ever, but it is fighting tooth and nail for that spot, and it's not even done yet. Only 4 out of 7 chapters are even finished, and this is at like spot like 11 or 12. FTL, Faster Than Light. This is maybe my favorite roguelike ever, and I admit this is due to some perhaps unfair biases, because I first played this game when I was pretty young, and it took more like video game bullshit to make me frustrated, you know what I mean? You start with one of many preset ship and crew setups, and then you have to upgrade it as you progress to take down the Rebel flagship. And there's a lot of weapons and crew setups you can run, different ship systems you can choose to prioritize, different ways you can choose to fight that have upsides and downsides. The gameplay of it isn't perfect. It does have some random events which are annoying, but these events often have additional choices that open up if you have specific crew types or specific weapons or so on. This is on top of some really intriguing world building and one of the most beautiful atmospheric soundtracks I've heard in the game, much less in an indie game from like 10 years ago. I would give it a 9 out of 10 with the understanding that, again, I'm biased towards it because I've been playing it for years. If I had tried it for the first time today, now that my standards are higher, I would probably hate this game. But since I already have an understanding of all the bullshit that happens and how to work around it, I really, really like this game. Void War is up next. So I ran into this game during my FTL kick that I had, and I found it in the Steam store a few days before it launched, and I thought, wow, this is pretty much just FTL, but set in a discount Warhammer 40k type setting. And I tried the demo, and I was like, you know what? This does do a lot to set itself apart from FTL with its gameplay. So you know what? I'll buy it. Why not? Boarding is a much easier tool to access for both players and enemies alike. It's much more common. Your crew members will often have much different stats, and you can equip them with different gear, but it's also easier to run into expendable crew that you can send on suicidal boarding missions or counter enemy boarders with. There's a lot of weapons and custom missile payload stuff, inflicting poison on the enemy ship, summoning thralls onto them, even casting spells at them. I don't think I like it as much as FTL, at least not yet. FTL is graphically much more pleasing in my opinion, just as a preference of style to be honest, and FTL also has a legendary soundtrack where Void War frankly doesn't. But Void War is still getting content updates, so I do plan to come back to it with time, and maybe my opinion will change. But for now, it's like an 8 out of 10 for me. Next is Cosplay Club. This is a new game from the devs of Chroma Squad, and I was really excited for it, but it's not really finished, if I'm gonna be honest. It's not a finished game. The core gameplay was really fun, not all that in-depth tactically, but I was emotionally prepared for that. The custom costume creation is really the big draw, and it takes you a bit before you unlock enough parts to really customize your own stuff, but it is possible to put together some really unique and fun things. My problem here is that there's a lot of bugs, a lot of quest lines that just aren't functioning correctly, period, and where I eventually stopped, I hit this boss fight that was a huge difficulty spike, and I wasn't sure how to handle it, and that was just kind of the last straw for me. After I filled out like 5 or 6 bug reports, and I was still running into progression blocking bugs left and right, I stopped after a little after 4 hours of gameplay, which is a shame, because I was really looking forward to this game. The studio, as far as I'm aware, hasn't said anything about it and has moved on to their next game. In fact, the store page says it's out of early access, but booting up the game still has the disclaimer that it's in early access. So I don't know what happened here. I just hope they don't get so sloppy next time, because as it is, it feels like they just released an unfinished game. So unfortunately, it's like a 3 or a 4 at best, and that's when I was really hyped for it and I wanted to love it so bad. I was ready to be hyper fixated on it. It had the Fluid Sac advantage, and it still just messed up. It just didn't land. Up next is Wildermyth. This is a sort of TTRPG adjacent game where you have a party of characters and you play through a procedurally generated narrative where different characters interact with story beats differently. Some characters might gain a scar or a transformation of some kind. Basically, the idea is that your generated characters become their own people and form their own unique legend. In practice, I'm unsure how I feel about this, because though the very dynamic system they've managed to create is impressive, I still don't feel like a lot of my characters end up being very interesting. A lot of them I remember more for their transformations or who they were related to or how long it took them to retire rather than anything about their personality or their character dynamics. Sometimes you get some hits though, like I certainly have favorites, don't get me wrong, and I don't want to make it seem like the system is bad, I just have complicated feelings on it. I do really like the battles and tactical gameplay, specifically the magic system is really cool, and that's what kept me coming back for a while. Basically, mages have to magically link themselves with objects on the battlefield, and what spells they can cast are dependent on the objects that they interfuse with, as they call it. This naturally makes it so the environment is really important in any given battle, and I love systems that force you to use your environment to your advantage, which really brings this game up a lot for me. I could see this game being like, for some people, a 3 out of 10, and for some people, a 10 out of 10. For me, it's probably like an 8. It's pretty good, but I don't think the character-heavy storytelling it's trying to do is great with procedural generation. I just don't think these sorts of things work together. Up next is MECHA Break. This was a game I tried looking for something I could play with some friends regularly, and I didn't like it very much. Even if you ignore the god-awful monetization, the character customization where it's easier to make a horrifying monstrosity than a person who looks real, and the sexualization of women so extreme it makes Rivals and Overwatch look mild. There's just not much team play in the battles either. If an ally is getting attacked, a lot of mechs don't really have ways to give them shields or cut the enemy off from attacking them. The super wide open maps don't really help either. So if you go up against a team who are coordinating who they go after, there's nothing stopping them from all just shooting the same person and making them die in seconds. In a game where otherwise it takes a pretty damn long time for people to die, and also, as a consequence, a long time for people to respawn. Or if you're getting chased as a healer, you can be getting chased for a really long time, and the only way for your teammates to help you is to shoot at them. But because there's so little team play, and it's such a wide open map, and your teammates are often spread out dealing with all the other enemies on the map, and it takes so long for people to die, people can't really help you that much if you're getting chased on a support class. Which is, like, at that point, why would I play a support class and not just play a damage character? I don't know. I don't know what type of game they were going for. And all of this is besides the fact that of the like 8 mechs that I tried, I found like 2 of them fun. I normally love playing tank, but I'm thinking of a specific tank mech where their thing that they do as tank is they pick a spot, they hunker down in that spot, they make themselves completely stationary, and they start shooting at people from that completely stationary spot. You just hold down left left mouse and right mouse and aim vaguely at people and stay completely stationary. And I thought to myself, wow, how does someone find this fun? How did they design this mech and think it was fun? It's like, it's honestly baffling to me that this was like a character they designed and they play tested and was like, yep, looks good, ship it. All that to say, it's like a 2 or 3 out of 10 for me. I really, really did not like it. Up next is Arkham Origins, which I admit I have not played past the tutorial of this game, and I don't really feel as compelled to continue it as I did with the others. I want to because I want to play the whole series. But okay, you know Ubisoft Towers? If you aren't familiar, these are open world games, often by Ubisoft, that have these towers you need to climb up to fully unlock different parts of the map. This is a trend that they have in Far Cry and Assassin's Creed and probably some other games. And I don't actually mind them, but the first 2 Arkham games didn't have them, and they were great, and the gameplay loop worked fine without them. So why add them to a gameplay loop that works amazingly without them? Well, like what are these towers adding? This also doesn't have Kevin Conroy's Batman like the other Arkham games. It has Roger Craig Smith, which, like, don't get me wrong, he does a lot better than I expected. He still puts a good performance, but it strikes me as a weird choice for a Batman. I don't know. I haven't played much. Can't really make much of a judgment. I've been putting off going back to it for sure. Armored Core 6. Wow, this game's really good. This game's really, really good. Not only does it have really intricate and cool build crafting, not only does it control amazingly and responsively while still capturing the feeling of piloting a giant mech, not only is the story surprisingly really good, not only is it visually stellar, not only does it add new content for New Game Plus and then more for New Game Plus Plus, but it combines that all into a combat system that feels distinctly like the FromSoft style, but isn't the exact same either. They're combining what they know with something new they want to try, and I think it came out kind of perfect. 10 out of 10 game for me. Grapple Dog. This is a really fun platformer. The central mechanic is a grappling hook which can't grab onto everything, only enemies and specific objects, but that means they can design the levels really intelligently about what you can and can't grapple off of. There's some really fun movement and momentum stuff you can do. The game starts really easy, but eventually gets really damn hard as you get into the late game. It forces you to master the movement. I also imagine it's really fun for speedrunners too. It has some issues, like there's not enough music variety and the story's kind of bland, but it's a fun game. I'm near the end. I have yet to finish it, but it's like an 8.5 or 9 out of 10 for me. There is a sequel and I want to get around to playing it because it seems really cool too. We're down to the last 3. Let's get to Wartales. This one is a bit like Mountain Blade Bannerlord that I talked about earlier. It has elements of a sandbox game where you make your own story, but it also does have pre-built storyline quests that make up the most engaging part of the game. The problem I have with this is that progression is really slow. I'd often find myself wanting to get to the next region for the next bit of story content, but I was too low level, so I found myself very frequently grinding off the random mooks and procedurally generated missions, so that I could not only get experience, but also money that I need to pay my troops, get food to feed my troops, and then buy materials to maintain my troops' armor. And that's fine for a game that's designed for that to be an engaging form of progression, but I'm more interested in getting to the story content, you know? Like, it doesn't quite have that dynamic, ever-changing world in the way that Mountain Blade does. Despite all that, I do think it is a fun game. There's a lot of interesting effects on all the different gear you can get. Your choice of weapon is really important. All the classes have different skills to learn and upgrade, and the tactical part of the gameplay during fights is really cool and fun. There's some really intriguing world building with morally gray decision making, some really interesting supernatural elements that catch me off guard every single time. Like, I keep thinking this is a very standard, historically accurate medieval game, and then it adds some like freaky ghost monster stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay. It even has some really dope dungeon crawling segments with puzzles to solve. Like, I have over 100 hours in this game. I was indeed having fun with it. That previous criticism is like not something that ruins it for me. It just could have been a 10 out of 10 game if the progression weren't so rocky. As it is, it's maybe like an 8 out of 10 game for me, and I'm not super interested in most of the DLCs. Maybe I'll come back to it sometime with mods. I don't know. Date everything. is a pretty recent release from Sassy Chap Games, which has kind of blown up recently for its insane premise and absolutely fucking stacked voice cast. Almost every single big name in English voiceover is here. It's kind of insane. So the concept is that you can date personified versions of all the characters you find in your house, with 100 totable dateable characters, with each with at least 3 endings. This isn't the type of game where every single choice matters a lot, and you have to choose between 5 very specific routes that are all like 10 hours long. That's just not the type of game this is. It's called Date Everything, after all. But each individual character strives to capture their own sort of energy with a combination of hilarity and creating actually really interesting characters. Now, there are certainly some that are a swing and a miss for me, whether that be because of how their questline plays out, or some progression-related bugs, or just the concept from the start for me is not always my jam. But most people will certainly find a few that they vibe with. I'd give it like a 8.5 out of 10 maybe. I could see an argument for 9. I could also see myself maybe doing a tier list video on my favorite characters once I've completed them all. Oh yeah, I'm at that level of Fluid Sac with this game where I'm like, I want to complete all the characters' questline, and there's 100 of them. Oh, I'm done with like 40 some now, and I haven't gone back to the game for a couple weeks. I want to do it. I want to complete all of them. And lastly, the most recent game I've started playing as of making this video, which means I'm not very far into it, Fallout 3. For reference, I am not that big of a fan of New Vegas, and I really, really like Fallout 4. So far, I think it's fine. The combat mechanics are not impressive. They're pretty stiff, but they're also from 2008. Graphically, it's nothing to write home about, but I do like the environment design better than New Vegas still, which is just desert, desert, and more desert. The writing is not quite as interesting as New Vegas, but I also find it less frustrating to engage with, because New Vegas tries to boast really high player agency while also having a lot of choices that kind of suck balls. Like, oh, do you want to side with the incompetent cops, or do you want to side with the actual slavers? And I'm like, well, I guess I'll side with the incompetent cops, I suppose. New Vegas does have way better perks though. I'll fully give it credit there. The perks in Fallout 3 are so bad. It's comical how there's just nothing interesting about them. There's a few fun quests, but I'm mostly enjoying experiencing it as a sort of relic of where we came from, as opposed to having fun on its own merits. So far, it's probably like a 6 out of 10 for me, maybe 7 on a good day. And there you have it. These are, I believe, all the games I've tried to play, at least on my Steam account, over the course of this year. I hope you got some nice recommendations on what to look for, even if it was one of the games I didn't like personally. Don't worry about me too much, folks. I'll get my Fluid Sac sorted out. I'll still probably be slow with uploads until then, but hopefully I can get it all sorted out before too long. I do have another, admittedly lower effort video idea about my biggest hyperfixation right now. That should be done pretty soon. I wish I had a joke for this outro, but I don't. So instead, I'm going to remind you that this video only exists because of a weird thing in my skull that is way smaller than the size of my pinky fingernail. And that is crazy how the world works.